found you are all alone with the great unknown in the haunted house. There's only one good spirit, it's the spirit in the bus. With shaking hands and full of talk and force them down your throat. Grind your teeth.
Hi. Happy Halloween, everybody. My name is Russell Atwood, and I'm the author of a new novel called Apartment 5 is Alive, and I'm going to be reading a selection from it today. Actually, I'm going to be reading the first chapter. Here's a copy right here. I just want to let you know, you saw a Blue Umbrella logo. All proceeds from the sale of this novel go to help Blue Umbrella Books, a brick-and-mortar independent bookstore located in Westfield, Massachusetts, where this no man book release is taking place. Anyway, here's the novel. Apartment 5 is Alive. It is set in New York City, as you'll find out shortly, and it's about an apartment with big ideas when it comes to Halloween. We'll be reading Chapter 1, The Amputated Room. The apartment knew. How it knew, how much it knew, how much it understood of what it knew will all be gotten to, but first it must be understood that the apartment knew, or else nothing wonderful will follow. This is not a ghost story. As far as the apartment knew, ghosts did not exist. It had never seen or felt any, and it was uniquely placed to have notice if there were. It was always there. It was, in effect, there. And there was nothing there but the apartment itself. No, parenthetically or not, when the apartment was empty, it was empty. The only things that inhabited it were living. This is not a haunted house story. Because one, as previously stated, the apartment would have known if it was haunted, and two, it wasn't a house, it was an apartment. But this is where we get into a gray area. It wasn't always an apartment. It began as a room in a house lived in by a family, and house or not, haunt or not, this is a haunted house story. Built in 1922, 65 St. Mark's Place was one of several four-story brick-faced slant-roofed row houses constructed between 1st and 2nd Avenue that year in Lower Manhattan. It can hardly be imagined how abundantly tree-lined the side street was back then, more like a country lane. The family that moved into it were a father and a mother, 2 young girls a year apart, a son, still an infant, a grandfather and a grandmother, and an unmarried sister who gave piano lessons. The apartment knew nothing back then. It wasn't even an apartment yet. It was a room. More, it was the favorite room. Its windows looked out over a coppice of newly planted elms that over the years would gradually grow higher in their reach for the sky. It caught both a slant of morning sun and a slant of golden sunset that crept across the cherry wood floorboards like fingers on piano keys. It was the room where the piano resided and where the unmarried sister's lessons took place, 3 days a week. It was where the birthday parties took place, where the Christmas tree went up, where they bobbed for apples on Halloween. It was a beloved room, and whenever visitors entered, they said things like, "What a lovely room, so sunny, so fresh, so alive." But later, when it was an apartment, prospective tenants entered and said, "Small, isn't it?" For the first 4 decades of its existence, the room knew nothing but blissful ignorance, no sense of past or present. Knowing nothing else, it had nothing to know. Such is the vicissitude of happiness. Change crept in. The boy died in the war in 1944, the grandfather the same year. The boy had been his favorite, named after him. The 2 daughters married and moved away. After that, there were fewer parties and celebrations. The mother and father died within a year of each other, and their wakes were held in the room. From 1954 to 1961, the only 2 people living in the house were the unmarried sister, still teaching piano lessons on Thursdays and Fridays, and the grandmother, who kept hanging in there, drinking her homemade brew of elderberry wine. When she finally packed it in, the house became too big for the unmarried sister, For years, she and the grandmother had only used the bottom 2 floors. The husband of one of her nieces was in real estate, and he made her a great offer on the building and found her a small house in Willimantic near where her other niece lived, and she adored it. The neighborhood had changed a great deal, and she no longer felt safe living on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Her piano lessons had dropped off, but 3 of her students had become professional concert pianists, so she could retire in peace. It was her niece's husband's idea to break up the 4-story row house into 12 individual apartment units. No idea this decision would bring about dozens of weird mutilations and deaths. The building had to be gutted to some extent to accommodate more plumbing, additional wiring, and a shaftway constructed so each unit had a flow of air. First of all, the room was cut in half, a wall built bisecting it. The room lost 2 of its windows. After that, the room remained more or less intact, while the sounds and vibrations of destruction surrounded it. The workers used the room to dump all their belongings and equipment they carried in the morning, and during the day mixed their plasters and paints there as they went about renovating the rest of the building with new walls, new ceilings, new fixtures, adding a new gas range, toilet, and combination bath shower to every unit. In the end, the room was the last on the list to be renovated, but by then money was running thin on the project, so only the most minimal amount of work was done on the room. Ceiling, walls, floor, marble mantle, chimney fixtures were left as they were. Plumbing was installed to make a small kitchen sink beside the door that led to the outer hallway and stairs, where before 2 doors swung open to reveal the grandeur of the room. Now just this single metal door with a peephole in it. And what had once been a roomy cloakroom had been converted into a narrow bathroom with a toilet and combination bathtub shower, but no sink. Its original window glass 4-panel windows frames were sledgehammered out. 2 new energy-efficient metal windows were installed in their place like dentures. Its wooden shutters were left intact but folded away and painted shut in their recesses. Similarly, the room's fireplace had its chimney sealed and a metal plate installed and painted over. As for the rest of the room, they left it as it was, half of what it had been. The apartment didn't understand what had happened to it. It didn't know yet, but it was aware of the change. It seemed only a moment ago everything had been perfect, and now somehow the house was gone and it was alone. Apart, not a part of a whole, because there was no longer a whole, except the hole all around it where its house used to be. Taken apart, broken into pieces, carted away, replaced by new pieces. Everything except for the room, halved and half finished, half and half not, and not a room anymore, but an apartment. The apartment felt this schism and awful vacancy. It knew nothing but loss, being a fragment of what it had been, the victim of an amputation in reverse, the body cut away, removed, and the single limb left behind to feel phantom pain. And then in 1963, the first tenants moved in. Thank you. Well, I hope that's intrigued you enough to check out the rest of the book. It's a corker. And again, happy Halloween and good night.